show you that a bit later on, but before we do that, we've got a whole bunch of stuff set up over here to explain exactly how iron farms work, exactly what controls the iron golem spawning, and all the things you need to know to build your very own iron farm.
Dive into a summer season full of surprises with Animal Crossing New Horizons. Discover new sea creatures, big and small. Meet returning visitors and craft beautiful furniture for your island. Each season brings changes, and now it's time to enjoy a summer of marine magic in Animal Crossing New Horizons, only for Nintendo Switch.
A bit later in the video, we will return to our iron farms and explain exactly how they work, but for that to make sense, I want to go through a few details about how iron farms work, how we can spawn some golems, and what the rules are, and yeah, basically what you need to do. So let's start off with the basics. So what do we need? Well, we need 3 villagers. They don't need to have a workstation or a profession, but they do need to have slept in the last 20 minutes. On top of that, they need to be scared by some mob. In this case, we've got our friend Bob the mob. He is going to scare these villagers. So if we let them see each other, they will get scared, they will wonder what to do, and they will talk to each other, and then shortly afterwards they will spawn a friend to defend themselves. There he is, and you can see that he is pretty cross with Bob. Bob is not very popular, and that is what we need to do to spawn a golem. Now, when we talk about our villagers, they need to be within a certain range to count as being buddies, and that range is this big square, which is 10 blocks away from the villager that wants to spawn the golem. So as long as all of those conditions are met, then the iron golem will spawn. Of course, we need to take him off the platform and kill him, but that is the basics of how it works. But there is a few more details than that, so let's get on with the next bit. The sun is going down and that means that villagers want to sleep. Now the important thing here with iron farms is you can't constantly scare villagers, because if you do they will not sleep, and that means that eventually the iron golems will no longer spawn. So what we've got here is we've got a couple of setups that you can do to break the line of sight between the mob that scares the villager and the villager themselves, and that means that they will be able to hop into bed and that will just count as sleeping. So as you can see, these villagers here, they're trying to sleep, they jump in and that counts. That's all we need to do. That's good enough. They don't need to stay in bed for very long. And likewise over here we've got another setup with a zombie in some water, and we've got these villagers that are jumping in and out of bed. That again counts. So over here with this one we've got our friend Bob again bobbing up and down in the water, and to do this we just have two copper walls, some water source here flowing this way, and then with a mob inside this tube, and they will jump up and down, breaking the line of sight on their own. No complicated redstone or rails required, and that that works. So here we go, we can see the golems that are spawning on top. So that's an important thing to know, is to make sure you're not constantly scaring your villagers, and you need to break the line of sight to allow them to sleep. Next up, let's talk about this gruesome lot. These are the mobs that can scare a villager and force them to spawn a golem, and they have some different characteristics. So first of all, these three here, the zombie, the husk and the drowned, they have a scare range of 8 blocks. So if you're going to use one of these mobs, then they need to be pretty close to the villagers for them to be scared. Obviously they've got their own pros and cons. You need to make sure that your zombie doesn't burn up and die, and of course if it's in water too long it will turn into a drowned. Husks won't burn in the sun, and obviously drowns have some different mechanics when they're inside water. Sometimes they float, sometimes they sink depending on the time of day. So some different options there, but make sure you take care of the scare range. That is very important. Then the next mob over here is the Vindicator. This one has a bigger scare range of 10 blocks, but this one of course is a little harder to get in survival, but that's something to consider. Over here we have the Ravager and the Evoker. They have a 12 block range, again pretty difficult to get in survival, not impossible of course, but yeah, definitely more interesting, shall we say. And over here we have probably the most interesting one actually that I like to use. This is a Pillager, and it has the longest scare range of 15 blocks. So you can put this guy in the center and have your villagers quite spread out around him, which might make sense for the ranges we'll talk about shortly. Now one of the things about a Pillager is that when it spawns in survival it comes with a crossbow, and that of course is a ranged weapon, and if you're not careful it will shoot your villagers and kill them. But you can in fact pacify a Pillager. I'll show you how to do that a bit later on, but there is a way to do that, and that means this mob can be super useful indeed. Next up, I'm running 2 experiments to work out how far away golems spawn from the villagers. So over here we have a big spawning platform above some villagers and a zombie. They are just underneath, and also we have some command blocks, and what they are doing is they are detecting whenever a golem spawns. They are deleting the golem and placing a gold block on the floor so we can see exactly how far away the golem spawned from the villagers. Now I'm currently speeding up the game using carpet mod, so that will give us some results a bit quicker. And over here we have a very similar setup, but instead of a flat plane we have all of these different platforms at different levels. So hopefully from this we can work out how high above and below golems spawn in relation to the villagers. The experiments have been running for quite some time, and I think we've got some results now. As you can see from the shape, it is a square, so golems will spawn in a square around the villagers, but it's a lopsided square. If we look above, we can see here this sea lantern, that's where the villagers are, directly under that block, but that is not in the center. And I've actually counted out the blocks and put down these signs. So if we are facing north, so looking that way, which is north, it is 8 blocks away. So the villagers are here, and then we can count out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But on the south direction, going the opposite way, it's only 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that is the same for the west and east. So west is 8 and the east is 7. And in terms of the height, the golems will spawn 6 blocks above and 6 blocks below the villagers. So here we have our villagers, and they are standing on the sea lantern. Let's call that block 0. And if we count up, we can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But none above, so the 6th block above that is gold. So yeah, golems are spawning there 6 blocks above. And also if we count downwards, so obviously we've got block 0 here, and then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 back there, so 6 blocks below. Yeah, so that is the size that golems will spawn. So what you can do now is, if we take our measurements from the X and Z plane and also the Y plane, you can draw this box. So golems will spawn anywhere inside this box, including on top right here. So here is our villager that's going to spawn the golem. He's right here, and we've counted up 6 blocks above and counted 6 blocks below. So golems will be able to spawn on this block right here, and of course anywhere inside this square. And if we look up from above, you can see we have our lopsided square. So this is where you need to have your spawning platform for your golem anywhere inside this area. Now for golems to spawn, you don't need a platform that big. If you have a 5x5 area anywhere inside here, that's probably good enough, because that will capture 95% of the spawns, because there are 10 spawn attempts when this happens, and that's enough. Those 25 blocks are enough to capture most of the spawns. So there we go. That is where golems spawn in relation to a villager. But what about if you want to block golems from spawning? Sometimes we have our iron farms inside buildings or with some terrain nearby. So I've been doing some testing with a whole bunch of blocks here, and I've been using this platform we've had before to see what stops golems from spawning. So over here I've added some blocks underneath. So if a block has got green underneath it, the green concrete, that means that golems can spawn on that block. So all of these block spawns, so glass, the slabs, and obviously redstone components as well. If you've got a slab here, the top level slab, that will allow the spawns. All of these block the spawns, including a torch on a block. Golems will not spawn on top of that. Things like water would allow, we've already seen that already. Lava will not. And over here was interesting, these flowers stop spawns, so golems will not spawn on top of those